What's happening, peeps? This is your boy, JTrain83, the Rail Enthusi-Artist. This week I wanted to revamp this art piece and also tell another one of my personal rail fanning stories. This piece I titled it My First Time on the Franklin Avenue Shuttle. So I remember it was summertime in 1988. Of course I was at the age of 5 at the time. I remember my mom wanted to go out and get some air, enjoy some outside time, which was very rare for her because she always liked to go to work and come home, and that was about it. So she decided she wanted to go to Prospect Park, which was something pretty much unusual. She never would really travel like that, but she wanted to take me there. So once my mother and I was dressed and ready, we was heading out the door, and of course we're heading out over to the Gates Avenue train station. Because the first train we're taking, of course, is the J train. So my mother and I, we get dressed, we get ourselves ready to go ahead and head out to Prospect Park. And of course, to go out there, we had to take the subway. Knowing me, I was very excited about riding the subway. So we finally get to Gates Avenue station. The usual. We come up the stairs. My mom goes to the token booth, gets the tokens. I go under the turnstile. She pays, and then we head on upstairs some more to the platform as we wait for the J train. So my mother and I, we waited for the train on the Queensbound side of the station, and of course, we would take that to Eastern Parkway. At the time, it was called Eastern Parkway for the J train. For the ANC, it was called Broadway East New York, and it was only called Broadway Junction only for the L train at the time. It wasn't unified till much, much later. So from there, we then got to Eastern Parkway, and the next train we was taking, of course, was the A train. At that time, the A train was only running local in Brooklyn. There was no C train service that was running on the weekends like that, so we was waiting for the A train. And the usual car class that my mother and I was boarding was, of course, an R44. Anytime if I rode the A train as a kid, I always rode R44s more than R38s. Granted, R38s was in service at the time, and they were freshly rebuilt actually, so it was almost rare to catch them, while there was more R44s that was on the route, so that's why it was kind of why I rode 44s more than the R38s. So my mother and I had boarded the train, and we was well on our way to the next part of the destination, which was Franklin Avenue. So we went there and we caught that and rode it down to Franklin Avenue as the train was running local. So this was indeed another part of the transit system that I was pretty much introduced to, because I pretty much was, again, living in my early livelihood in Bushwick, Brooklyn. So I wasn't really traveling around the subway system as much, but I was getting well introduced. So we finally make it to Franklin Avenue station, and I remember my mom and I had to get out of the train station because it wasn't a free transfer at the time. You actually had to come out of the subway and then go up the stairs, and I think you paid at Franklin Avenue station for the shuttle. Actually, let me retract that. It was somewhat free if you came from the A train, but I think you paid if you was just coming straight from Fulton Street or wherever around that area. So I remember going up the stairs, once I made it to the top of the stairs, it was on top of this very old structure, because little did I know part of that was actually remnants of the old Fulton Street L, which was attached to the very end of Franklin Avenue station. So the elevated structure wasn't your commonly built L structures that you see that are active today, but this one had lattice girders. And it looked really, really old and vintage, and it looked really awesome. And that's what I saw when I came up to the station. So once my mom and I made it to the top of the steps, I remember at the end of Franklin Avenue station, everything was pretty much wooded top of the lattice girder structure. And I remember the token booth was like on the very outside of the platforms, so it kind of like was watching where the train was coming in and leaving. So there was like 2 platforms with 1 track bed, and 1 platform was only put to use because that was where the train came in and terminated before it went right back to Prospect Park. And I remember there was a gate and some turnstiles that you still had to go through in order to access the platform for the Franklin Avenue Shuttle train. So once my mother and I went through the turnstile and made it to the platform, that was when the train arrived. But to my surprise, I did not expect this was happening. So the car class that the Franklin Avenue Shuttle was using was R27, R30 car class, just like the J train, except it was 4 cars and it was covered in graffiti. So to my surprise, once again, the Franklin Avenue Shuttle line was, another part of the subway system that I was first introduced to. And to tell you the truth, this subway route at the time, this train line was real decrepit, and I mean, it was in bad condition. I mean, the track beds was in hazardous condition. The station platforms had the station canopies with paint chippings falling, graffiti all over the station structure. I mean, this was something like, it looked real neglected. This train line really looked super neglected back then. And it didn't help any that even the subway car equipment was covered in graffiti running along this old, decrepit structure of a train line back then. So my mom and I was boarding the train, and we was on the train, was waiting for it to get ready to depart out of Franklin Avenue so we could be well on our way to Prospect Park. And keep in mind, R27s and R30s, those subway cars were, of course, non-air conditioned subway cars. So those cars, they had the built-in AXA-flow fans that was in the middle of the ceiling panels on the train. So if you rode those in the summertime, they didn't really give out cool air. It gave out much warmer air. So for extra ventilation purposes, the train crews used to leave the doors open in between the cars. So whenever the train moved, the air circulated through the train. And even the windows were open on the trains too, so the train sounded so loud you had to like yell if you was having a conversation with somebody while riding the trains back then. So my mom and I finally made it to Prospect Park Station, and we got off the train and we was going right over to Prospect Park, and that was pretty much it from there for my little subway adventures. I still have more subway stories to tell for another time. And for those who are new to my channel, if you're ever taking the chance to hear one of my subway stories, let me know what you think. Again, I'll always have more to tell. So in conclusion of that being all said, stay tuned for more of my art videos. And remember, be kind to one another, be cool, and see y'all on the next one.